Last year, Huawei hinted about its budding international ambitions with the thinnest phone at the time, the Ascend P6, and now the company doubles down on that design paradigm with the steel and glass puppy here. This is Daniel from Phone Arena introducing the Ascend P7. The phone sports a chassis that is just 6.5mm thin, but keeps the weight of its predecessor, despite that the screen has grown up from 4.7 to 5 inches now. With the Ascend P7, Huawei also keeps betting on its own processor line, but with a more powerful quad-core member, and has upgraded the screen, the camera and the internal memory departments. Can these enhancements take the P7 to smartphone glory given the cutthroat competition it will be up against? Let's find out. The Ascend P7 is one of the thinnest and lightest handsets around, and we're not just talking 5 inches here. The 6.5mm thickness and 124 grams of weight are even more impressive considering that the phone's unibody chassis is made of Gorilla Glass 3 on the back, with a metal rim surrounding its sides. The iPhone 5S, for example, whose steel and glass design the Ascend P7 arguably follows, is thicker and only a tad lighter, but sports a 4-inch display against the P7's much larger 5-inch panel. Huawei's finest feels premium in the hand due to the design materials used. The corners, edges and the whole bottom are rounded, so the phone is also comparatively comfortable to hold, given that the other handsets with such a design feel rather edgy. The only gripe we have with the design is stemming precisely from this svelte demeanor, as picking it up from a table turns out to be a bit finicky. The metal power lock key and the volume rocker on the right are well placed, feel sturdy and offer a good tactile feedback when pressed. Beneath them are the memory card and micro SIM trays, flush with the side surface and very easy to take out with a pin or be pushed back in. Pressing the volume rocker down quickly 2 times evokes the ultra snapshot function, which fires up the camera and takes a picture from a locked screen for a second or so, which works exactly as Huawei advertises. With a 5-inch 1080 by 1920 pixels display, Huawei Ascend P7 offers a good-looking screen that has a very good pixel density, making text appear crisp and details smooth. The color representation is largely accurate, but the screen's color temperature is way too cold on its default settings. We measured 8405 kelvins, which is quite the deviation from the reference, making white actually bluish. The phone offers a slider to adjust the color temperature though. The P7's 463 nits of peak brightness are at the mark for a good display, and the screen reflectance is kept in check, so we're pleased with the outdoor visibility of the Ascend P7. Viewing angles are rather good too, with the vertical one a bit better than the horizontal, but that is only visible when looking at the panel from the extremes. The screen has a sensitive touch layer, which allows you to use it with gloves, an option that can be toggled on and off from the display settings. The first thing you notice about Huawei's new Emotion UI 2.3 overlay on top of Android KitKat is that it does away with the up drawer and centers everything around the home screens. The central one has a couple of widgets placed on it, which are very compact with minimized border distance, and thus you can fit a bunch of them on one screen. Another home screen offers the default apps, most of which are neatly laden into categorized folders like Tools, Google Services, and so on. The apps to download are added directly to the empty space on the home screens, but of course you can move the upper icons and widgets around. Huawei spices the interface with 9 stock themes, which can be further tweaked down to the lock screen animation or the respective ringtone. The lock screen, in its turn, offers 4 quick access shortcuts, which appear when you swipe up from the bottom of the display. You can toggle the flashlight mode from here, enter directly in the calculator and the calendar, or set up the frame for a quick selfie. Amongst all its connectivity and profile toggles, the notification bar also offers a dedicated screenshot button. There's notification management in the settings. You can set which app can post alerts in the status bar and which is banned from doing so. Huawei offers an interesting take on easing one-hand operation and multitasking with the handset. You can enable the so-called suspend button from the status bar, and a small circle will appear on the side of the screen, which can be moved around. You can tap on it anytime and there will be home, back, lock and so on icons arranged in this rotary manner, so you don't have to stretch your thumb all the way down to reach the on-screen navigational keys at the bottom of the display. Tap on the suspend icon in that same rotary dialer, and a couple of apps will appear that you can float in small windows on top of anything else you're doing underneath. These include staples like a small messaging window, calculator, calendar, music player and a notes app, but you can only fire up one of those floating apps at a time. The default Emotion UI keyboard is very well spaced, and the symbols are big enough so you don't tap on the neighbor when trying to key something in quickly. At 5 inches and with an elongated profile, the display is just right for one-handed packing with a bit of a stretch, unless you have smaller hands. You can just slide a finger across the letters to form a word too, as the keyboard is based on swipes technology. Huawei refuses to give in to the Snapdragon mania and again offers a homebrew processor in the Ascend P7. The newest high-silicon 1.8 GHz quad-core Kirin comes with Mali's 450 graphics and is built on the 28 nanometers process. Looking at the derived benchmark results, the processor is nothing to write home about, roughly equal to Snapdragon 600 and a far cry from the 800 or 801 set. The Kirin processor is powering the handset relatively well though, with no discernible lag in the interface or problems with app performance, save for the browser, which is marred by a choppy and lagging zoom and scroll. Huawei has placed the typical for today's flagships 2GB of RAM in the handset, so a serious active apps queue can be formed before you run out of it. There are 16GB of internal storage, of which 12 are user available, and there's a microSD card tray on the right side for expansion when needed. The default Ascend P7 browser is pretty barren as an interface, and page rendering as well as scrolling, zooming or panning around feel quite sluggish. The situation gets better in terms of scrolling and panning if you use Chrome, but zooming still lags a bit too much for the phone's category. The handset has a 4G LTE modem and is a pentaband 42 megabits per second HSP Plus handset, meaning that it supports all major frequency bands, so you can use it on both AT&T and T-Mobile in the US, for example, as well as in Europe and Asia for international travelers. There are also Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.0 and assisted GPS radios, along with DLNA and NFC, while the wired connectivity is simply a regular microUSB port. The typical grid thumbnail view in the gallery is about all you get, with no fancy pinching rearrangements for instance. The picture editing options are quite rich right out of the box, offering color and dimensional effect in addition to the usual cropping, resizing and adding of filters. The music player is pretty attractive visually, with the obligatory tune categorization by artist albums and genres, as well as album art depiction. There are no built-in equalizer presets, but the DTS Foss surround sound button makes a difference when turned on, and the loudspeaker churns out a very strong, we measured 79 decibels, full and clear sound to boot. In fact, it's pretty rare that we encounter such a good speaker on a phone, let alone in one with a 6.5mm chassis. In addition, the Ascend P7 plays most popular video formats thrown at it out of the box, including DivX, XVD, MKV files up to 1080p of resolution. The video player is rather bare bones though, with no loop function or subtitle support. This time around, Huawei has placed a 13 megapixel camera in the Ascend P7 with a backside illuminated Sony Exmor sensor, 2.0 aperture and 5-element lens. The front-facing shooter is even more intriguing with a generous 8 megapixels of resolution. The camera app interface is simple, with easily accessible and easy to tap on options. There are a few basic shooting modes like panorama, HDR, beauty phased and burst shot, and a couple of color effects. Nothing fancy, but most stuff you might need is here, and Huawei throws in a few extras. The camera offers object tracking and smile recognition, as well as the ability to place preset or editable watermarks over the photos. The phone focuses for about a second, even in dim lighting, then takes a second or two to record the photo, so shot times are about 2 or 3 seconds, which is quite adequate. The so-called Ultra Snapshot function lets you enter the camera app and take a picture for about a second from a lock screen by quickly pressing the volume down button 2 times. Huawei Ascend P7 captures photos of decent quality, but results are rather inconsistent. Overall they look good, but the color balance sometimes leans on the cold or warm side, nothing distracting but not correct. Some of our sample photos came slightly underexposed too. The Ascend P7 captures enough detail to be worthy of a 13 megapixel camera status, but there is softness at the edges of the frame. Indoors, most photos came out perfectly acceptable, but the P7 sometimes threw a warmer yellowish cast over the scene. The flash did a decent job of illuminating our test scene from about 5 feet, 1.5mm distance, but the light was rather unevenly distributed, splashing the scene in the middle while leaving the edges in the dark. As mentioned, the front camera is 8 megapixels and has a 720 HD video recording mode. However, we didn't notice the high resolution to result in much higher pixel video quality than your average front shooter. It offers a 10-level beauty mode slider, which allegedly enhances your face, though it mostly smears the face detail as a result. Some of the shooting modes from the rear camera find its way into the frontal. You can do panoramas with it, as well as leave a custom watermark. The phone is capable of shooting 1080p video with 30 frames per second, and the resulting footage is pretty fluid, without lost frames or artifacts. The phone also adjusts the exposure quickly when panning around, but the overall impression is for a darker, underexposed scene compared to what you see in reality, and the edges appear too soft. The two microphones record excellent sound, so you can hear every bit and piece of the various street noises surrounding the footage. The Ascend P7 is a great looking handset with a premium feel and a nice spec sheet. Its eye-catching design also makes it one of the thinnest and lightest Android 5 inches out there, and an ambassador to Huawei's engineering prowess. The phone is a nice upgrade over its predecessor too, as it offers a good 1080p display and improves on the weakest spots of the P6, like the camera quality and the 3D gaming performance. Given the processing power, you're able to grab a number of other cool handsets as alternatives, such as last year's Samsung flagship, the Galaxy S4, or the Alcatel One Touch Idol X Plus. They both offer specs similar to the Ascend P7, but don't have its premium design. If you stand the P7 against the seasonal flagships like the Galaxy S5, Xperia Z2, or the HTC One M8, this svelte handset can keep its own in most departments, save for the chipset, but those competitors are more expensive too. Thus, if you're looking for a decent performer with great slim design and a very good screen, core and audio quality, the Ascend P7 should rank high on your list of desirables. This was Daniel from Phone Arena with a video review of the Huawei Ascend P7. For more information about this and other handsets, you can visit us at phonearena.com. Thanks for watching.